I worked in Sayeret Matkal long enough to know one thing. Weapons don't lie. They either do what you need, or they show you why you never should have trusted them. We didn't carry favorites. We carried what kept us breathing when things got loud. What follows isn't theory. It's the steel we chose when failure meant someone didn't make it home. You start to understand the Tavor X95 not by looking at it, but by walking with it. Long patrols, tight corners, hours of ready up with no shot fired. It's short without being weak, thick without being clumsy. At first, the weight feels rear heavy, strange if you've lived your life on front-balanced rifles. The controls are where your instincts expect them not to be. But after a few days, your hands stop thinking. They just move, and the rifle answers. It's not a love-at-first-touch weapon. The polymer body feels toy-like until you watch it drag through concrete dust and still cycle clean. The bullpup layout takes time to trust. The ejection near your face, the reload rhythm out of sync with muscle memory. On the range, it's fine. On drills, it's manageable. But when your heart beats in your ears and you're moving through a compound where every corner might talk back, that unfamiliarity flares up again. Where it settles is indoors. Doorways, stairwells, vehicles, it lives there. You can keep it shouldered through tight turns, muzzle forward without swinging wide. Suppressed, it holds balance. It doesn't snag. The recoil's more of a push than a snap, and even in bursts, the front stays low. When your offhand's busy with a charge, a pull, a wounded teammate, the compactness buys you time. But outside, in wind or open terrain, you start to feel its limits. Long shots feel floaty. Follow-up fire past mid-range starts to wander. You compensate, but you know you're compensating. It stayed in service because it gave something few rifles could. Freedom of movement without the penalty of switching to a sidearm. Guys who work entry, who stack on doors, who crawl into crawl spaces. They swear by it. Not because it's flawless, because in their world, it gives more than it asks. And when they move, the X95 moves like it already knew where they were going. But when the rooms end and the walls fall away, the Tavor 7 starts to speak. It's the same blood as the X95, but thicker, slower, heavier, like a brother built for a different kind of fight. First time you shoulder it, the weight shift is immediate. It pulls more from the back, settles differently into the pocket, and the recoil doesn't nudge. It kicks. Not violently, not unpredictably, just enough to remind you this isn't a hallway rifle anymore. You notice it on the walk. That extra weight changes how your body stacks. You feel it on uneven ground, in long setups, in high crawl holds behind cover. The controls are familiar, but the reloads punish hesitation. There's no fast in, fast out like with lighter kits. Here, everything needs to be deliberate. On full days, your shoulder tells you how many times you aimed, and your forearm knows every correction you made. But if you're pinned in a field trench and someone's watching you from 2 ridges out, this is what you want. The Tavor 7 holds its breath when you press it into position. The rounds carry weight, and that weight doesn't get pushed around by distance or wind the way smaller ones do. It finds targets through barricades, through brush, through light armor if it needs to. Indoors, it's too much. It drags, it bangs, it slows your step. You clear slower, you transition heavier. But outside, when you're anchoring a team or holding a roofline alone, it carries the burden for you. It stayed because teams needed something between full sniper and standard carbine. Something brutal but manageable. Operators who work rural edges, overwatch hills, cross long industrial sites, they leaned into it. it's not elegant. It doesn't move like a scalpel. But when you need to end the standoff in one shot from behind a low wall, the Tavor 7 knows how to end it. Then there are days when you don't need weight or authority. You need something that moves at your pace, not against it. That's where the M4A1 SOPMOD comes back into the picture. It feels almost plain after the Tavor line, lighter up front, calmer in the hands, familiar in a way that doesn't ask for patience. The first thing you notice is balance. Not forward heavy, not rear loaded, just neutral. Shouldering it feels like slipping into an old habit your body never forgot. You feel the difference on long movements. It doesn't fight you on climbs, doesn't drag your sling sideways, doesn't punish quick transitions between targets. Controls fall exactly where instinct expects them. Safety sweep, mag release, charging handle, all muscle memory from years of repetition. On the range, it behaves. On drills, it becomes invisible. You barely think about the rifle, and that's the quiet advantage it brings. But the truth shows up in cluttered spaces. The SOPMOD kit makes it modular, adaptable. Lights, lasers, suppressors, grips, all tuned for the job at hand. Indoors, it stays compact enough to clear without hitting every doorframe. Outdoors, it keeps a stable line without wandering. Recoil is steady, not sharp. String enough rounds together, and it warms up fast, but it doesn't buckle. The only thing it doesn't like is neglect. You let dirt settle too long, you feel it. Not failure, just resistance. It earned its place because it fit the operator, not the other way around. Guys who move fast, who flow between positions, who rely on instinct over brute force. They gravitate to it. It doesn't try to dominate the fight or solve every problem. It just gives you predictability, the kind that frees your mind for everything else. And sometimes, that's the difference between acting on time and reacting too late. But when predictability isn't enough, and you need something that shrugs off bad conditions without asking questions, the HK416 steps in. It feels different the moment you grip it. Denser through the rail, heavier toward the muzzle, like it's built to take abuse instead of avoid it. The controls are familiar, but the action carries a certain firmness that tells you it's running on its own terms. It's not light in the hands, and it doesn't pretend to be. You shoulder it, and immediately feel the weight settle into bone instead of muscle. You notice its nature during long movements through dust, rain, or cold. Where other rifles start to complain, subtle sluggishness, hesitation on the charge. This one keeps its rhythm. The recoil comes back as a smooth push, more stable than sharp, easy to ride even in quick pairs. But you pay for that stability with fatigue. Hours of ready up with the 416 remind you you're carrying a tool built for punishment, not comfort. On crowded kit, the rail can bite into clothing. In tight entries, the extra weight slows your snap to target by a fraction, enough to feel, not enough to break you. Where it earns respect is during sustained work. Fast shots, suppressed fire, dirty environments, it stays consistent. You don't get surprises, and in our world, surprises kill. Indoors, it feels stiff but reliable. Outdoors, especially when conditions turn against you, it's the rifle you want. The only place it starts to show limits is in long days where speed matters more than certainty. Fatigue creeps in, transitions lag, tight manipulations feel heavier than they should. It stayed because every team needs a rifle that refuses to quit even when the operator is running on fumes. Guys who work cross-border ops, who operate in storms, dust, or maritime humidity, They reach for the HK416. Not because it's smooth or forgiving, but because it won't embarrass them when everything else starts to fall apart. It's a rifle that keeps going. And for some missions, that's the only trait that matters. And when certainty isn't enough, and the team needs something that can hold a line on its own, you turn to the Negev NG7. It doesn't pretend to be a rifle. The weight, the profile, the way it hangs off the sling all tell you you're carrying a machine built for a different kind of responsibility. The first time you pick it up, the mass settles straight into your core, not your arms. It's front-loaded, unforgiving, and honest about the work it expects you to do. You don't swing it, you guide it, and it follows with the slow confidence of something that knows exactly what it is. The reality hits during movement. Every step reminds you that you're carrying more than firepower. You're carrying commitment. In tight interiors, it feels oversized. In stairwells, it drags. On long approaches, you feel every meter in your shoulders. The controls are solid, simple, built without delicacy. Reloads aren't quick, they're methodical. And the recoil, even tamed, has a weight behind it that rifles never do. A rolling push that tells you to plant your feet before the gun starts speaking. But outside, where teams spread out and angles widen, the NG7 shows its purpose. Prone behind cover, braced on a window ledge, anchored on a vehicle hood, that's when the gun settles into stillness and becomes part of the ground. Long strings stay orderly, the barrel tracks smooth, and the gun holds the line without drifting. Dust, mud, rain, none of it matters. It was built for ugly conditions, and it performs best when everything around it is breaking down. You don't use it to chase threats. You use it to stop entire sections of movement, to hold positions, to break momentum before it reaches your team. It stayed because every unit needs someone who can turn a weak flank into solid ground. The operators who choose it are the ones who prefer certainty over speed, who don't mind carrying a burden if it means their team moves safer. It's not graceful, and it's not kind. But when the fight stretches wide and you need a gun that doesn't blink, the Negev NG7 is the backbone that keeps the rest of the line breathing. But all that weight and reach don't matter the moment your primary goes silent. And that's when the Glock 17/19 stops being a sidearm and becomes the only thing keeping the gap between you and trouble from closing. The first time you grip it after carrying rifles all day, it feels almost too light, too plain. No rails biting your hands, no metal echoing cold through gloves. Just a simple frame that sits low in the hand and points exactly where your eyes are already looking. The trigger has no ceremony to it, no grand reveal. It just breaks clean, the same way it did yesterday and the day before. That sameness becomes its own kind of comfort. You notice it most during transitions. Rifles jam, slings twist, tight hallways trap your barrel, and the pistol fills the space before your mind has time to question the move. Drawing it from a plate carrier or belt feels natural, unthinking. The controls aren't clever or elegant. They're familiar enough that even tired hands don't fumble them. And the recoil isn't sharp. Just a quick snap that resets before you've finished exhaling. It's the one tool you never blame for what goes wrong. Its limits show up when the fight stretches beyond arm's reach. Step into open ground, and the pistol starts to feel small, almost fragile compared to the rifles behind you. Long strings heat it fast, and in heavy gloves the slide can bite if you rush manipulations. It doesn't love dust or mud, but it tolerates them better than most. What it refuses to do is show off. Indoors, in cramped vehicles, in sudden collisions where everything collapses into one arm's length. That's where it earns its keep. It's not there to win a fight. It's there to keep you in it until the rifle comes back. It stayed because reliability matters more than personality. Operators who spend their days in transitions, moving in and out of vehicles, clearing tight apartments, or working low-visibility details trust it without thinking. It asks for nothing, draws no attention, and gives you exactly what you need when everything else goes wrong. The Glock 17/19 isn't a statement. It's a promise. And in our line of work, quiet promises are the ones that save lives. Still, there are rare moments when subtlety isn't the goal, and you need a sidearm that carries more presence than practicality. And that's when the Desert Eagle appears. You never forget the first time you hold it. The weight alone tells you this isn't a pistol meant for everyday carry. It sits heavy in the hand, metal thick enough to feel like a small tool rather than a sidearm. The grip is wide, almost stubborn, and the slide has a slow, deliberate movement that feels closer to a handheld machine than a duty weapon. Nothing about it feels quick or forgiving. You notice its nature the moment you try to move with it. Drawing it from a holster takes commitment. Reholstering takes patience. It's not the gun you want to rush. The recoil doesn't snap. It surges, a deep push that makes you plant your stance whether you want to or not. Mag changes feel slow, and the weight pulls at your wrist, like it's reminding you that every shot is work. In tight quarters, it feels oversized. In vehicles, it gets in the way. And if your grip isn't perfect, the gun lets you know immediately. But its purpose was never about convenience. In certain units and certain teams, the Desert Eagle filled a niche where intimidation mattered almost as much as accuracy. It hits with a force that changes conversations. In remote compounds, in maritime boarding actions, in operations where you need a sidearm that ends the argument without a second follow-up. That's where the gun earns respect. It isn't subtle, and it doesn't try to be. The weight helps steady it for controlled, measured shots, and when you press it into a target from close distance, the gun stays planted like iron. It stayed in limited circles because some operators want a tool that carries raw authority, the kind you feel even before it fires. It's not for everyone, and it's not meant to be. The ones who choose it usually know its quirks, accept the burden, and use it for very specific tasks where finesse isn't the priority. The Desert Eagle isn't a partner you keep at your side at all times. It's the one you call when you need a message delivered with no room for misunderstanding. But when the job stretches far beyond shouting distance and the team needs quiet control over a place no one can afford to approach, you bring out the Barrett MRAD. The first time you unfold it, you feel the weight settle with purpose. Not clumsy, not excessive, just dense enough to remind you this rifle lives in a different world than carbines and sidearms. The stock adjusts with a kind of mechanical certainty, every click firm, every surface cold and deliberate. The bolt throw feels long but smooth, the kind of movement that asks for patience and rewards it with consistency. Nothing on it is fast for the sake of speed. Everything is slow for the sake of precision. You understand the rifle better once you're lying behind it. The grip angle, the cheek weld, the length, they all lock you into a position that stops time for a moment. The recoil isn't violent. It's a steady push that rolls through your shoulder and back, easy to ride if you've planted yourself correctly. But you pay for that precision with weight and bulk. Moving it through tight structures is a chore. Climbing with it strapped to your kit feels like dragging a reluctant animal. It takes space, and it demands stillness. Where it earns its place is in broken terrain and long overwatch setups. Rooftops, far ridgelines, industrial perimeters, anywhere the fight needs to be shaped before it reaches the team. The MRAD holds its point of aim like it's glued to the earth. Temperature shifts don't rattle it. Dust rarely matters. Long strings stay consistent as long as you do. It doesn't rush. It doesn't forgive sloppy form. It rewards calm breathing, steady pressure, and the kind of patience that keeps a unit alive when threats appear long before they're close enough to see. It stayed because every team needs someone who can reach farther than the danger expects. Operators who choose it often prefer slow certainty over speed. The ones who don't mind holding a position for hours, waiting for the 1 second that matters. The Barrett MRAD isn't about excitement or volume. It's about control. Quiet, measured, deliberate control over distance and consequence. It's a rifle for when the fight starts, long before the enemy realizes they've been found. But distance isn't always a matter of extremes, and sometimes you need something that lives between patience and pace. That's where the SR-25 comes in. The first time you shoulder it, you feel a balance the heavier rifles don't have. Not light, not quick, but steady in a way that lets you stay mobile without sacrificing the confidence of a precision gun. The controls feel familiar to anyone who grew up on standard platforms, only refined. Smoother safety sweep, cleaner trigger wall, a cycling rhythm that feels almost polite compared to bolt guns. It doesn't demand the same stillness as the big rifles, but it doesn't tolerate sloppiness either. You notice its character in how it behaves during movement. Climbing ladders, shifting between windows, setting up on uneven rooftops. It never fights you, never drags like the larger platforms. But it also doesn't disappear. You feel the weight in your sling when you crouch low, and the length reminds you to think before turning in tight spots. The recoil has a firmness to it, not harsh, just enough to keep you honest during fast follow-ups. And while the action stays smooth in most conditions, long days in dust or humidity make it clear that the rifle expects you to treat it with a little more care than the beat-up carbines. Where it shines is in mid-range overwatch. The distances too long for standard rifles, too dynamic for bolt guns. Rooftops with broken lines of sight, industrial zones with layered angles, rolling hills where threats move unpredictably. The SR-25 settles quickly into position, holds steady through controlled strings, and lets you shift targets without breaking your position entirely. Indoors, it's bulky. In vehicles, it's awkward. But in those in-between spaces, not entry, not pure sniper, it becomes exactly what you need. Reach with rhythm, precision without delay. It stayed because teams rely on shooters who can work fast without sacrificing judgment. Operators who choose it are the ones who bridge gaps, covering entry teams from a floor above, protecting convoys from offset positions, shaping the fight before it gets too close or too far. The SR-25 isn't the tool for the patient hunter or the fast mover. It's for the one who stands between them, steady-handed, tapping threats out of the fight before the rest of the unit even sees what's coming. And then, there are the moments when nothing else reaches far enough or hits hard enough. The rare calls where the team needs a rifle meant not for balance or rhythm, but for decisive force at distances that turn most weapons into guesses. That's when the IWI DAN comes out. The first time you lift it, the weight feels absolute, not inconvenient, just final, as if the rifle is reminding you that every shot carries consequence. The chassis is thick, the lines angular, the bolt long and deliberate. It settles into your shoulder like a piece of machinery that expects you to slow down and match its pace. You understand its nature only once you're fully behind it. The recoil doesn't snap or roll. It drives straight back. a grounded shove that forces you to commit your whole posture. The rifle won't tolerate casual form. It wants alignment, pressure, breathing that knows exactly where it's going. Moving it is work. Setting it up is work. But once it's in place, the world narrows until only the target and the trigger matter. There's no fight left in the rifle. All of it funnels forward into a single point. Its strengths show in harsh places. Wind-cut ridges, long valley crossings, broken industrial sprawl where threats hide behind metal and distance. The DAN stays steady against gusts that push lighter rifles off target. Its barrel holds temperature better than you'd expect for something dragged through dust and cold. Every shot feels like an intention, not a reaction. But it's not a gun for repositioning, not a gun for climbing through structures, not a gun for anything that asks you to move quickly. It trades mobility for certainty, plain and simple. It stayed because some missions demand an anchor, a shooter who can reach where no one else on the team can, who can remove a threat long before the rest of the unit even knows it's there. Operators who choose it are the ones willing to carry the weight without complaint, to set up early, to wait longer than anyone else. The IWI DAN isn't about versatility or speed. It's about finality, the quiet understanding that some problems are solved from far away, with one slow breath and one steady pull.